Greetings to all involved. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Joining me for this episode is my friend and producing partner that y'all don't always see because he's behind the camera, but now he's in front of it, Chris Black.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, indubitably. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for letting me get out from behind the camera.
Get out from behind the camera and, stretch your legs a little bit.
If not, I'd be in there watching the college football game right now.
Right, and you would rather be doing that.
There is. I think I'd rather go watch that.
Talmadge is going to come back in a while. And my other guest, friend, and recurring guest to the channel, Talmadge Roger Vernado the third.
Thank you.
I'm glad you got a heck of an entrance. What did I do?
You got invited to the draft party.
I got invited to the draft
see, we
party.
watched part of the draft and Talmadge wasn't there.
I was the one invited to the draft.
I
did the inviting.
You invited me the day before. Then part of the way,
however you translated, I wasn't invited. Yeah. So on to the topic.
If it makes you feel any better, part of the way through the first round, we both were like, man, it'd be fun if Talmadge was here too. So we did think about you.
It would have been fun if you had answered the email.
There was no email.
The one that you didn't send to us.
What's this episode about?
Hey, yeah.
Let's don't go any further. Let's just move along.
So speaking of the National Football League, today we're going to explore a topic and answer some things that none of us will ever be in a position to have to actually decide upon, but we're going to have fun with it because we're fans. So I presented this topic to these guys, and the topic is, what if we were owners of NFL franchises? So, if you don't know, Chris is a Kansas City Chiefs fan. If you don't know and you don't see what shirt he has on. So, he's going to be tackling the subject from that angle. If he were the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you're somehow also not aware, Talmadge's Tennessee Titans are his favorite team. So, he's going to be tackling it as if they were Talmadge's Tennessee Titans.
Kind of works out there.
It does. It's got a very good flow to it. I really like it.
Triple T.
I don't have a favorite team. I really just love football, and I love certain players, and I can watch anybody. So I've decided I'm going to go with the team that's geographically closest to us, that I do have some strong opinions about what they've done in the offseason.
I'm fairly certain.
The Dallas Cowboys.
There's a lot of people that have
strong opinions. We're shooting this during week 9 of the 2024 season. I first presented this before the season started. So we're going to go for the angle of what would we have done with our respective teams heading into this season. So basically, as soon as the Super Bowl ended, as soon as Chris is celebrating with his Chiefs, what are you looking at going into free agency, the draft? How are you preparing your team for the 2024 season? And then we may explore what that would look like at this stage.
In my case, at the end of the season, I was looking for a new team. So that's...
He was looking to maybe start an expansion franchise or something like that.
Expansion franchise, the Tennessee Titans.
You would start another one maybe. All right, so Chris Black, if you were the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs, right off of your back-to-back Super Bowl wins, how do you approach the season?
Well,
this past offseason.
Coming into the offseason, I already know that I've got two big decisions to make, or a big decision to make for two players.
Yep.
And that's Chris Jones and Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed.
And where did he end up going? Sorry, we'll get to that.
Dallas would only wish. And I don't think I could do that to him. I sent him where I thought the air was clean. Tennessee.
Fooled you.
Yeah. So the decision is, who do you take? Do you take the defensive lineman and sign him? That's going to put all the pressure at the quarterback and disrupt the run game, or that helps your defensive core, your defensive backs, or do you sign the defensive back and let the D lineman go? Mm-hmm. So which way do you go? The team did what I would have done. I would have signed Chris Jones. Yes, trading Sneed is what should have been done. You don't want to just let him walk. I don't think they could let him. I think he was still under contract, but they traded him. Sorry. We didn't. I think we got a
You got a draft pick.
We got a draft pick. It was like a fifth
wasn't-
round or third round, something like that.
You
But
got
it was
a pick and a pick swap.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was. It, so it, unfortunately, I'd like. Could I keep him? Yes, very much like what you're going to talk about with Dallas and what their options and what they needed to do. I would prefer to keep both, but you have a choice. It's one or the other. So I would have kept Chris Jones.
Okay.
Coming into the draft, I mean, I would have liked to sign another receiver. They signed a receiver for what they did, but
Oh, you talking about in free agency or in the draft?
well, I started
they
out
have
with the
one of
draft, but
both.
yeah, but in free agency, I would have liked to sign another receiver
On top of Hollywood.
On top of
on
Marquise
Hollywood,
Brown,
if
that's
you-
what I was about to ask.
on Hollywood Brown. But I mean, that's
Instead of Marquise or in addition?
in addition. I
Okay.
think, if I could, but I'm not going to argue with what Brett Veach has done. I mean, Brett Veach is one of the best, if not the best, general managers in the league. He is very savvy. He's made very good. Now that doesn't mean things aren't going to go bottoms up, and I hope that, from my standpoint, and selfishly, I hope that never happens. I'm sure you feel the same way about us.
question.
We
question.
need. No, I'm kidding.
No question.
Yeah, exactly.
Question.
But I mean, because if you lose the guy, which we did, we're in a world of hurt right now because we've lost players left and right. So, I would like to, since we're letting Snead go, we're trading him away. I wouldn't mind have tried to shore up that defensive side. That cornerback would be nice in the draft.
Fortunately, you already had Trent McDuffie, so that's why
That's
Snead
a
was a little
huge-
more.
yes.
I don't
He
want
was-
to use the word expendable.
He
because
was, yeah.
Snead's still great.
Yeah.
But because you had McDuffie, that did make that decision.
Well, the
easy.
nice thing is that you look at McDuffie, and between the two, Snead was not an All-Pro last year. McDuffie was, which makes you kind of
mean,
go,
yeah.
how was that the case?
I don't know
Who
why
was-
Snead wasn't.
I don't know why
but
Snead wasn't.
To your point, McDuffie's that type of player.
That's McDuffie's a great player, but I would like to have somebody else over on another young guy to replenish. They got a great core of cornerbacks. Okay, we already have that. So, but I wouldn't mind bringing in. You can never have enough corners, and if you've seen our team so far, and Walking Dead is what they look like. They are starting to look like that because we're losing guys left and right. Who's out there and who's available? I don't know that answer. I don't know. But as an owner, I would empower Brett Veach to do what's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the owner personally.
You actually
I
do.
know the owner.
Unlike the two of us,
I
you know the owner.
I
of the
actually know the
Chiefs.
owner, and so I know he's doing that.
Hello, Clark Hunt.
Yeah. Hello, Clark. I'll be kind. I always nothing but kind, unless you're Jerry, and then I'm not
Oh,
kind.
no.
We'll get to him eventually.
But I know what Clark's doing, and he's letting Brett do what Brett is going to do, and that's what I would do as the owner. Is I would let him. I would get out of the way.
Let him do what you hired him to
Unlike
do.
your general manager,
Yeah.
I'm not going to. As an owner, I wouldn't get in the way of letting him do his job. I'm paying him to do a
Let
job.
him do the job you
but
hired
let
him
him
to
to
do.
do his job.
Yeah.
So, honestly, you're the defending world champions, and we're going to try to run it back a third time.
Yeah.
And so,
And there's a risk in trying to change too much when you're the back-to-back defending champs, but you always want to improve,
you
right?
want to improve, but if you're always changing things, you run that risk of tweaking too much.
Yeah.
And losing some of those personalities. Now, one thing that I read all the time online is about how the culture is and the type of culture that is in Kansas City, and that all starts with with Reed, your head coach. He lays down what that culture is, and he
sets
has
the tone.
all those
I'll
boys.
take it a step further. I think it starts with ownership.
No, it does start with ownership because they don't put Andy Reid in place. None of the rest of that happens. So
Right,
yes.
but I'm saying is Andy brings that.
Randy Ead.
Well, Randy might, maybe Randy does. I don't know. I don't even know who Randy we're speaking about.
Randy Reed. Who
Randy
is that?
Reid, but he brings that culture, and he has instilled that culture into the team. So my point was, is you start changing that out sometimes. Now, granted, I knowing Veach, Veach is not going to go get a guy that isn't going to buy into that kind of culture.
Yeah.
He's going to get the guys that are wanting to be a part of that culture. So as an owner, I'm not going to do too much. I'm going to let. I already said I'm going to let Veach do what Veach is going to do. Maybe you wanted more information out of this than what I got, but honestly, other than signing Chris Jones to a long-term contract, I don't really have anything that I'm not going
And
to
to
already
that
hand
point-
to
You're the
Veach and
Super
let him
Bowl
go.
champions. There's not a lot of changes you're gonna make. Number
Yeah.
one.
And to that,
Number two,
sorry, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say also, you had some salary cap restrictions. You don't have a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah.
So what you're gonna do is build through the draft like you always have,
Yeah.
develop players like you always have, and then make the one or two tough decisions like you mentioned that you had to make. And actually, it wasn't. I mean, I know what you're saying. They're both good players, so it's a tough decision. But football-wise, it really wasn't that tough a decision.
'Cause here's the thing, if
Because
you
Chris
keep
Jones
Snead-
is a difference maker on defense. Snead is a cover player. He made a difference last year. But with Chris, if you can pressure the quarterback from the inside
The
and
way
the
that he
outside,
does,
the way
yes.
that he does, I'm gonna make my corners better anyway.
Right.
So that was an
So if
easy
you let
choice
Chris
to
Jones
Yeah.
go, now we'd be sitting here saying, well, why would they do that?
So that,
Why
like,
would-
yeah, that wasn't a tough decision at all of what to do, and they Brett Veach made the right decision. That was
Yeah.
to sign.
Yeah, so to
Chris
my
Jones.
point, there's not a lot of information you have to have because when you're the champions, what changes you gonna make?
Right.
Right. Well, and,
The only-
and that goes back to what we said: is it's just you start tinkering it with it, and you get beyond what you should have been tinkering with in the
Right.
first place, and now you lost
And
everything.
every team changes what 10 to 12 players every year if they're lucky. Most are more than that.
Right, but if
in,
you're
in
minimal,
Kansas City,
yeah.
you're only going to change 10 to 12 players. That's only because free agencies, retirements,
Yep.
and you do have to change the back end of your roster, special teams, that kind of
Things
thing.
are gonna
and
change
draft
some.
picks come in,
Yeah.
but your core is not
It's
going
not going
to
to change. You
all.
don't want
Yeah.
to.
So
Why
the
would you
only-
want to change your quarterback?
Yeah, when you're back-to-back champions,
Yeah.
you don't want to.
Yeah.
But two questions
Okay.
that I'll have, and I don't have an opinion on right or wrong. I'm just curious what you would do. So they signed Marquise Brown, which I think, I will just say this, I do think that was a good move to get another
No,
receiver.
absolutely, it was a good move.
Would you have gone after him, or is there another free agent receiver you think you would rather have seen?
No, I mean I probably would have stuck with him. You got to take a look at. He's coming in on a 1-year deal. It's approved.
They were very safe with how they did it.
Yeah,
1
I mean-
year, $7 million, I think. So.
You got to look at you've got limited cash. You're limited in what you have for cap. He gives you the best bang for your buck, basically, and that's what Brett Veach is going to look for.
Yeah.
He's going to look
I
for
think
these
it was
guys.
a very good value
Yeah,
signing.
it was a value
for what they
signing,
did.
and hey, if you prove it. Either you're going to get a big contract for someone else and you help us win another Super Bowl, or we end up deciding to make
Best
the
case
decision to
scenario,
stay-
let's
to
keep you long term.
Right,
yeah.
we keep you long term.
Which I'm not
So-
even sure they. I mean, yeah, that could have played out that way. But I agree with you guys. I think when they signed him, they're just looking at the 1-year deal.
Yeah.
And that's where they are.
That's
And-
exactly what
and,
they're-
and,
yeah.
and they get another Brown next year.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
There's always going to be a receiver that hasn't developed as well somewhere else.
Yeah.
That will develop because you're now wearing
Now
red.
they're in
Now you got
opportunity,
Reed.
yeah.
Now you got Mahomes, and you're playing with a winner.
Yeah.
So they have a luxury that most teams don't have.
Yes, they do.
They can get players on prove-it deals because number one, that's all the money they got. But number two,
They can
who wouldn't
take
want to
that
play for a world
risk.
champion?
Yeah, and who
who
wouldn't
wouldn't want to
wanna
play for
come
Matt
here?
Mahomes? Who wouldn't want to play for Andy Reid? Other teams just don't have that luxury.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So what
And
was
then
your question?
my only other question is, so they draft Xavier Worthy,
Yep.
which I'm assuming you would agree to get another receiver once Rashee did his foolishness. You got to kind of put another weapon
You
in
don't have a
place.
choice there.
Of the available receivers, well, I'll just make it real pointed. Would you have drafted Xavier Worthy
Or
with his
Thomas?
skill set, or you being an LSU
LSU
fan,
fan.
Brian Thomas Jr., who went to the Jaguars after Xavier was drafted?
Honestly, that's a good. I probably yeah. Just why do you have to ask good questions? I like Thomas. I think Thomas gives you a little bit more downfield in the sense that he can go after contested balls. You haven't seen that out of Worthy yet. You really haven't. But I don't know how much Worthy has really kind of gotten a hold of the offense as well. I mean, he's doing what he's doing, and I like what he's doing. Don't
He's
get me wrong.
contributing.
But hey, it doesn't matter to me. Honestly, it didn't matter.
Okay.
Brett Veach saw something and We're gonna let Veach
So
do
you would have
Veach.
said, all right, let's roll
You
with
know,
that.
as an owner, you've gotta trust your guys. Now they're not gonna do anything outside of coming and talking to you about it.
I was about to
first
say, there
place.
may be some
You're-
times
you're
where you have
not
to
a-
say, I'm going to
You're
detail
overriding,
that
yeah.
because, but
As an owner, you're
I
not going
agree
to be
for the most
completely
part.
out of it unless you're Jerry and you're completely in the middle of it. But
But if you hire Brett Veach,
You hire
and
him for a reason.
and you micromanage him, why are you paying the man to start with if
Exactly.
you're not going to let him do his job? So
Exactly.
I agree. There would be, for me, there'd be some situations where I'd say, Brett, I hear you, I respect you, you know I do. This one I just can't.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this.
as an owner, I'd be torn between
yeah.
which one to do. But that's why I sit here and say, hey, I'm paying you, Mr. Veach, and I'm paying you, Mr. Reed. You guys figure it out,
And
I'll write the check.
let's all work. Let's make this work together. So no,
So
I don't disagree on that.
and I'm good with whatever.
Really,
they're
the only
doing.
time the owner should get involved anyway is when you're talking about signing a player because he's got to pay the check.
Yep.
And when you're talking about making a trade, especially if you're trading away a veteran player that's been a part of your culture for a long time, then you might want to get your owner involved because they're going to want to sign off on that. Any other time, if my owner says anything, even being the GM, I'll probably risk my job, but I'll say, go in there and shut up, and I'll do this. And if I can't tell my owner that, I wouldn't take the job.
Yeah.
Because he has to know going into it, or she has to know going into it. I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but when you hire me, just know I'm going to tell you to stay out of it.
Or don't hire me. I mean, that's.
Or don't do it. Let me do this. And like I say, I'm not saying never because they are the owner. The buck stops with them. They have a voice, obviously.
Yeah.
But if it's not dealing with money, or if it's not dealing with some sort of public relations gaffe that could haunt that team for years to come, you let me do this.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep.
Or don't hire me. Yeah. So I can see that. Okay. Any other closing thoughts based on those decisions? Looking at where the Chiefs are right now in the current season, would you have said, I want to do anything? Now, obviously, you can't control the Marquise injury. You can't control the Rashid injury. You can't control the Pacheco injury.
And
But with those things,
and all the injuries that have happened on the defensive side of the ball, there's been
Yeah.
several that
you can't necessarily
Depleted.
prevent any of that.
we've had cornerbacks go down. So with nasty injuries, so it is what it is. I mean, Veach is doing a great job through looking out around the league to see who is available, and I mean he's already picked up Uchi. I think that's his name. He was a defensive end.
Did you
I
stump
think.
your toe?
Yep, I did. I can't remember the guy's name. He got
Steve Mariucci? Wait, no.
no. Not
But
that-
you
not
also
that
you
old.
also got Talmadge sent you DeAndre Hopkins. Or not
Yeah.
really sent you, but y'all
He came
picked
right
him
after the
off.
Hopkins trade. I can't remember the guy's name. He was a defensive guy.
Okay.
But anyways, Uchi, Joshua Uchi, or Uch. I don't know how
I
you
saw
say
Oh.
that the other day. Yeah,
Uchi,
from New England.
yeah, for New England. So they just exchanged him for a 26th round, a 6th round pick in 2 years now, in 26.
That's not much
So
to give
it's
up.
not much to give up, and so I know that Veach is going to do what necessary to keep the ball rolling, and he takes pride in what he's wanting to do, and
Well, you
and-
can,
and
and
leave
it
a legacy,
shows.
so-
The results show.
yeah. So I don't really have anything. I mean,
Too much more drastic.
no,
Yeah.
I mean at this point
Okay.
it's just let Veach do what Veach does. He's going to put a winner on the team. On
Yeah.
the field,
I mean,
so.
well, and again, the results have spoken to that.
2
so.
years in a row, and
Yeah.
you don't go into it going, I don't care about a third year. Or, I don't care about a
Said
fourth or
no
fifth
general
year.
manager ever,
Right. So
that stays in the league and is worth keeping. Yeah. I
to
mean,
Talmadge's point, you're an owner, write the check, get involved when the money part gets involved. But other than that, team, back out. Let the general manager do what you're paying him to do.
Okay.
So
All right. So Talmadge Roger Varnado III. If the Tennessee Titans were Talmadge's Tennessee Titans, what do you think you would have wanted this past offseason to look like?
Sadly enough, and I'm ashamed to admit it, pretty much like it did. It hadn't worked, but I understand the reasons behind it.
Okay.
As far as the draft goes, I liked their draft. Sweat to me was going to be if this draft was good or not. obviously Latham because he's the first round pick, but I'm saying you'd like to think everybody gets the first round draft pick right now. I know they don't, but going
But you
into
want-
it,
yeah,
you're under
ideally,
the assumption of okay,
you get
the first
anything
round-
right, it
yeah,
needs to
the
be
first
that.
round pick's gonna work. So beyond that, to me, this draft is going to hinge on can Sweat play. He can. They have found that out. Oddly enough, Jeffrey Simmons, their longtime good player, borderline all-pro player, has had the down year between the two. I thought coming in the year, putting those two together,
Right.
if Sweat could play, nobody would be able to run on that team. For the most part, that's happened. You can get them on the outside a little bit because their linebackers aren't that great. But up the
But the
middle,
interior line,
you're
yeah.
not running it. And if Simmons just played like he always played, they might be even more
better,
dominant.
yeah.
But so that question has been answered. I was questionable about the pick. I loved the talent, but he had some off the field problems and some conditioning problems. The guy's 365 pounds. So the question is, how many plays could he play?
Well,
So if he can only play 20 plays a game, are you going to waste a second round pick on a guy?
is
can
that
play?
worth? Yeah.
Well, against Miami, he played 85, I believe, percent of the snaps. So he's proven he can play.
Okay.
He's played very well, so question answered. And because of that, I think this draft has proven to be, believe it or not, a pretty strong one for the Titans. And they need them. They need stacks of them. They need 3 or 4 in a row. They're still recovering from the last 3 years of John Robinson, where they have nobody. I looked the other day. They have one player left from 2019 to 2022.
Really?
In those 4 years of draft, they've got one player that's still on
Who's the
team.
one player?
I can't remember.
Okay. Wow.
But they've got
He
one.
makes an impact.
They've got one player, and so that tells you they're recovering
That tells
from
you a lot.
a lot of bad drafting. So that's as far as the draft goes. As far as free agency, this is the part I liked. It just didn't work. Their goal going into the offseason was to find out if Will Levis was their quarterback.
Yes.
And considering they had a lot of cap room, they had a ton of it, they went out and got weapons. They already had DeAndre Hopkins. They went out and got Calvin Ridley. They went out and got Tyler Boyd. They went out and got Pollard to replace Henry. And they already had Spears
They
from the
already had
previous
Tyjae
year.
Spears,
So
yeah.
They had Okonkwo, and they had Wiley at tight end. Wiley's a second-round pick from a couple of years ago out of Cincinnati. So they had some decent weapons around him to find out if he could play. The goal was to shore up the offensive line. They also signed Lloyd Cushenberry to go along
Yeah.
with Latham. So from
That
center
was
to
a
the
good
left
signing
side, they
for
thought,
sure,
okay, we
yeah.
fixed that. Now can we fix the right side? The only thing they didn't address in the offseason from free agency that they should have is right tackle. But there weren't a lot of good right tackles out there. So
I was about to say that was probably more about who was available.
yeah, based on what was there and where they were, I liked all of those moves. Even defensively, they signed Ernest Jones, a linebacker from the Rams, young player. They've already traded him to Seattle now because their season has gone so poorly, but he played really well for them. They traded for Snead. They traded for Awuzie, so they fixed their back line. Now, all these guys are veterans, but again, if your goal is to find out if your quarterback can play, what they're saying is,
gotta
I'll
find out.
sacrifice this year as far as I'm not getting any younger just to find out if he can play. Because if he can play, if I've got my quarterback, he's still on his first deal. So I can go out and get more free agents next year because I've got cap room.
Right.
So the philosophy was sound. Now let's get to the execution. Hasn't worked. The one thing I think they miscalculated, and I did too, you're making all these changes, but you're also bringing in a rookie head coach who's never coached before. That's an awful lot of change at one time. I don't get, and they were horrible last year and the year before. So I'm not saying changing is a
You're
bad
not saying
idea.
change wasn't
Right,
needed.
right? But it's like that's a lot to undertake at once.
That's a lot to ask a first-year head coach to take on.
Yeah, and then on top of the fact that Will Levis, the one thing I was hoping for from his own development was you gotta understand that you can't play quarterback like a linebacker. And he didn't figure that out. He got hurt in the Miami game. He wasn't playing great anyway, but he got hurt in the Miami game. So now he's missed. Well, they played in the next game and shouldn't have. So he's missed the last 2 games, and we're what week 9.
Week 9 is when we're seeing this.
So he's missed 2 games. He may miss a third one in a row. So your whole plan, let me get these veterans in to find out if he can play. Well, he hadn't been on the field, and when he did play, it wasn't good.
Right.
And some of these players you've already gotten rid of. So basically, in my opinion, you've wasted a year because the one thing you wanted to find out, you might have found out maybe Levis can't play, but you didn't find out
But
the
you
way you
didn't really
wanted
find
to.
out the way you didn't flesh it out the way you wanted to.
Exactly. And
So going into the season, you would have done things basically the same, but
yeah,
looking now,
I'm just admitting.
Yeah.
I would have been wrong. It didn't work.
well, but You don't know until you put those pieces into place, like you said. I mean,
And so for me, the trick going forward is, I think what the mistake they tried to make, and again, like I said, I was all for it, was we're going to put our toe in the water of a rebuild, but we're not going to out and out rebuild. The problem is the whole rest of the league knowing you should have rebuilt.
right.
And now it's proven, yeah, you should have rebuilt. So now you've basically wasted a whole off season and half of one season when you should have been rebuilding. You don't get that
You got to
time back.
rebuild more now.
So now you're a year and a half behind
Right.
where you could have been had you played things out differently. Again, not knocking them because I would have done exactly what they did, but the consequence of it not working is going to be paid for now.
Yeah.
And that's where I am.
So taking a little bit different direction, not thinking on the answer to this based on what you said, but if they were Talmadge's Tennessee Titans, how do you feel about Will Levis? Are you drafting a quarterback next year? Are you looking at free agency, jumping ahead to next year? I know that's kind of off the original topic.
No, it's
but-
not at all. Because if I'm saying our goal was to find out if he can play, it's ultimately to find out am I going to draft a receiver?
Right.
So a quarterback. So we're in the same line of thinking. Here's my thought on that. Well, I don't think we've got enough data to give a real honest assessment. If I'm going by my gut and I've got to make a tough call, my answer is no, he's not. You're asking me, will I draft a quarterback? I'm going to have a top 5 pick, probably top 3. To me, there's no quarterback out there that's worth it. So it goes
That
back.
was going to be my question. Is there somebody in the
So
college game right now that you would think to draft
Yeah,
that?
so it goes back to what we talked about in some earlier shows and also what we talked about off camera. I don't want to be one of these teams that drafts a quarterback because I need one.
And do it every
When there's
few
not
years
one
when
there.
there's not,
But at the
yeah.
same time, if I don't draft one and one of these guys does hit, the whole league's looking at me like you could have had such and such. So I don't know. If you're asking me if I was pushed to a wall, what I had to pick, what I would say is build through the draft and don't take a quarterback if there's not one there to your liking. And then draft some free agent quarterback like Darnold, or even, I'm not going to say Flacco because that's a little bit too old, but you get my point.
But,
draft
yeah.
a placeholder, and then hopefully you win 5 or 6 games. The next year you're going to be in the top 5 again, and then the class is better.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Because I'm
Okay.
to the point where we're not in a position, I just said over the last 4 or 5 years, we got one player left that we drafted.
Yeah.
So we can't afford to
You
wait.
can't repeat
anything.
that for the
We
next 4 or
just
5
can't.
years.
And even if people say Sanders, if he were available to take him, here's the problem. Is Deion going to let him play here? Deion's already said, and I don't want to say word for word, but basically intimated, I'm going to dictate where my
Where my
son
son
goes.
plays, yeah.
Does he want his son to go to Nashville that doesn't have the best reputation in the world? Maybe, I don't know. But if he doesn't, basically that's one quarterback that you might consider that you're taking off the board.
Right.
So again, that's my struggle. They'll need to draft a quarterback and here's the thing I found out about Levis too. I think the biggest thing with Levis is he's never understood that you need flexibility. And I know this sounds way out there, but I'm just being as honest as I can. You've got to be flexible in your upper body to play quarterback. He's very muscular. He's very stiff, so he can throw the long ball. But the nuances of playing quarterback, stepping up in the pocket, the slide steps, the manipulating the upper half of your body when you make a throw, he can't do it. All his arm strength comes from his arm, not from his hips, not from his torque, because he doesn't get any torque. 'Cause
Right.
He's not flexible.
You can only throw the ball so much when it's like that.
And I think that hurts him, and that's why accuracy is always going to be an issue. He can throw the long ball. He struggles with the intermediate ball, and he struggles with timing on crossing routes. And I don't know if you can ever fix that. He looks like, to me, he'll always be on somebody's roster because they love the arm talent. They love the size. And yeah, can he come in and make a throw here or there, win a game here or there? Yes.
Yeah.
But will he ever be 17 games, you're my quarterback, let's go win a championship?
And you put us in the playoffs with a realistic chance to do
Just
something.
no.
Yeah. Okay.
No. And I'm leaning towards no.
So you'd be looking at maybe a Sam Darnold or someone.
Just because there's nobody out there in the
Right,
draft I like.
right.
Now, again, we're months away from the draft. This is as we film, November. So these things always change. For all I know,
Yes.
there's somebody out and I'm not an expert, I'm not a draft guy, so I'm just saying based on what I've heard and seen.
Yeah. There may be
it's
somebody
not-
you would take that you don't know about
Because
right
even
now.
back from Georgia, coming in, he was the bee's knees, right?
Yeah.
Black guy saying bee's knees. He was the bee's knees, right? But now, you see warts in his. I mean, I wouldn't take that guy in the top 5. there's no way in the world I take that guy in the top 5. So it's just like,
Somebody probably will, but I get your point.
I don't want to be in the position to have
Yeah,
to reach.
no, I get it.
That's my fear. I keep saying my big fear is going forward. They're going to do like a lot of teams do and just overvalue the quarterback because it's a quarterback. Reach. He's going to be a flop, and we just wasted a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it again, but I'm going to say it again. Cleveland.
I was about to say, I already know what you say. You're not going to say it again.
Yeah.
And
That's all Cleveland ever
if
did
there were
over the
more
years.
quarterbacks available that were good, I'm all for it.
Right.
We need to take one.
Like,
yes.
you're not saying you don't think drafting an elite quarterback's a good idea. Of course, drafting an elite quarterback's a good
Yeah.
idea. But we're talking about drafting a quarterback at a spot where you take an elite quarterback when there's not an elite quarterback available.
And also, I'm not a big believer in we're going to draft him as a project. I mean, some of those work. Purdy worked. Romo worked.
Jordan
Brady
Love.
worked. Yeah, but Jordan Love's first round pick. I'm talking about.
Well, but he sat behind
no,
Rodgers.
I'm
is
talking
what I
about
meant.
as far as draft.
And Romo-
Oh.
And
Yeah.
Romo wasn't drafted. He was,
That's what
he
I'm
was
saying.
signed. He was
That's-
just signed.
that's what I'm saying, free agent.
But a
I see what
project-
you're
But it
saying
was a
now.
project,
No,
right?
that's my point though.
I follow
Not
you now.
first round quarterback. I don't want to be
Purdy, who was the
like
last
we took
pick.
like we
Right,
took
yeah.
Levis in the second
Yeah.
round. Year before that, we took Malik Willis in the third round. I'm not a big believer in let's take a guy in the fourth round on a flyer and see if he works
Right.
out. They don't work out. Take one in the first round if they're worthy.
Yeah.
That's it. If they're not,
Just because you're there doesn't mean you got to take one, right?
Right.
exactly.
Right.
But I also don't want to. Well, you can take one in the third round and maybe he'll develop. They don't. They don't. Typically, they don't.
I mean, occasionally you're going to get your
named
Romos and your Brock Purdy's, but yeah, you just
but
Dak.
they don't.
He
Dak,
was-
Dak.
When was he
round.
drafted? Was he a fourth
Fourth
round?
round.
So yeah.
So I'm not saying it doesn't happen,
But it's rare.
The percentage
every year
is
they
rare.
take 17 quarterbacks in a draft. Maybe 2 of them work out.
I was say the
15
percentage of
didn't.
times it does
Yeah.
work is
Yeah.
relatively
and
small.
plus we
Yeah.
did that with Willis, top of the
You've
second
already
round.
done that.
I mean, Willis third round. Next year,
Levis second round.
second round. We've done that. Take the first round, bona fide. I think he's going to be a star, or don't take one. Period.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
And literally, period. That's it. So
Yeah.
that's right.
Get that offensive tackle.
That's I was about to say nothing really that I had to add either. I already asked you in a previous episode about Odunze, and you said that would have gone either way, but we all agreed too. Latham was not a bad pick. So
I think we did another show. So yeah, in this specific.
that was on another
Yeah.
episode. So I just may not have seen it.
I'll answer quickly for those who haven't seen it. That was tough for me.
Yeah.
I would if they would have took Odunze, I've been glad with that.
Oh,
they took
yeah.
Latham, I'm glad with that. As a fan, we always want the juice, so I would have gone with the receiver.
Right.
But when I'm building a team, I probably would have taken the offensive line.
We all know without a good offensive
Yeah.
line, doesn't matter who else you have.
That's
so,
right.
All right. So now I'll talk about if I were the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. And unlike Chris, I think there's a lot of work to be done. So where he said he wouldn't change too much being the back-to-back defending champions, I would have had a pretty busy offseason.
You would be all in.
I actually would be all in. Unlike,
But they were.
yeah, of course.
Well,
They're
they were.
Their owner, who happens to have the same first and last initials as I do, did say they were all in. So, just to say, I've never been in this position, so I'm not saying everything I'm saying is going to work.
It's
But
rarefied
to be
air
all
for you.
in, yeah.
What you would have tried.
Here's my thought on
What
you
that
got to
means.
do something with where you are right now.
Yeah.
First thing I would have done, honestly, is try to re-sign Tony Pollard. I get that he didn't have a great 2023 season. He also was coming off a broken leg the previous year before, and I don't think they utilized him to his strengths last year. They tried to make him a workhorse. They didn't get him in space as much to see his explosiveness. It's kind of to the point we made earlier. If I'm the owner, I'm not going to try to tell the coach how to coach the team. If I don't think my coach can coach the team, he's not going to be my coach. So I'm going to let my coach coach, but I might have a polite conversation of, how do you think Tony's season's going? How do you think we're using him? Do you think he's as productive as he could be? And I'm not going to be red in the face screaming, telling you how to coach a team, but I might, to get a dialogue going, say, do you feel like the way we're using him is working the way you thought it would? And maybe come to some kind of thought of the coach of, let's maybe try something else, because I'm not ready to give up on the guy. I think he's a darn good running back, and what he's been doing in Tennessee this year makes my point. I would have tried to keep him. Would I have broken the bank for him? No, but I would have made the effort to keep him. I would have, as the owner.
Would you have signed him for the deal he signed for with Tennessee?
What was it like? It was 4 years.
Was it 4? I thought it was 3. But
Maybe it was
4.
3
I think it was
years.
3.
I'll be honest, I'd have to look at that, but my initial thought is quite possibly.
It wasn't.
It wasn't a massive
It was
amount.
the running back market was a lot better than we thought it was going to
Yes.
be. So that played into it, but it wasn't absorbent. It
Yes.
was, I think it was 3 years, $8 million a year. I think it was 3 years.
That
$2
sounds
million.
about right. So based on roughly that, yes, I would have. I think he's worth that. I would have as the owner, just because, and some of y'all know me better than others. These guys know I'm a people person. I really care about people. I really invest in people. I would have sat down one-on-one with Tony and said, look, I'm just going to come out and say it. We didn't really utilize you to the best of your ability this year. I'm going to fall on the sword. You're better than what the league saw last year. I want to invest in you further. Here's what I want to see happen. And I would have tried to sign him. If I just couldn't talk him into it and he walked, I'd live with it. But that would have been my first move. And if I could have talked him into staying, I would have then signed either another free agent running back, maybe someone like Gus Edwards, who's a power back, different style, use them in tandem. I realized Gus hadn't had a great season and he's also injured right now. But going in, look at somebody like that, or maybe draft, and I'm going to name one of Talmadge's favorite rookies and then one of mine. Maybe draft Marshawn Lloyd or Braylon Allen because, again, young, powerful, different style of Pollard, use them in tandem. And I would have told Tony that up front. I'm not giving you the ball 35 times a game and asking you to run between the tackles. I want you to be special for what you're special at. I'm going to bring somebody else in and play all off of each
I'll
other.
say this, though, and a lot of people don't realize this, and I'm not knocking you at all. Your assessment is good, but actually Pollard's a better between the tackle runner than I realized. He actually has
He's
no
not
problem.
bad.
He's pretty good. I think he was second in the league yards after contact last year.
He actually was, but I think he could have been. I think he could have had even more if he could have had more space to get further before he got contacted. I guess is kind of my point. Like you look at that metric and say, what could he have done if they used him in space better?
Well, let me ask you one more thing. The thing that shocked me was, like you said, they didn't pay attention to a running back in the draft. That's what really got me. If you don't want to sign a free agent at a running back position, okay, I get it. But the second thing is, I thought they would go after Aaron Jones when the Packers let him go.
And
I would've been
actually, it's funny you say that because I'm about to talk
Okay.
about. So yeah, no, but that was a perfect segue. So if I just couldn't sign Pollard, and actually I'll go back to the running back because I'm going to address something else that we had to look at. And yes, that's also what I'm going to get to. Y'all don't see what I see, but both these guys is like reading my mind to where I'm
Chomping at the bit over
going.
here for give you something, but
So yeah, no,
You already got it.
You're already
They already
on
got it.
top of that. But I would have also, before we got too far, even before the draft, I would have looked at it realistically and said, okay, I've got 3 pretty good pieces to my team that all have contracts that'll be expiring within like another year. CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott. Okay? Unlike what actually happened, I wouldn't let that nonsense drag out the whole offseason.
Yeah.
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to re-sign CeeDee Lamb because, in my opinion, he's as good as any receiver in the league. He's one of the best overall players in the league. Like, I'm not saying he's number one regardless of their position, but he's one that would come to mind.
He's a
I'm
leader.
re-signing him. I don't care if it's $33 million or $35 million. The guy's going to know I want him on my team. I believe in you. Here's what I'm paying you. This is what you're worth. I'm not letting him spend the whole offseason getting distracted by, am I getting a contract? What are they going to do? Now I'm going to sit out. I want
Especially
you
when you're
focused
gonna-
on football.
Well, especially if you're going to end up signing.
I'm going to end up doing it anyway.
And everybody knew it. That's the thing.
The whole
Everybody knew
world
it.
knows that I'm going to pay this man, and if I don't deserve to own an NFL team. Yes, I did say that. CeeDee Lamb's going to get a contract from me way before he has time to get distracted by it.
Yeah.
That's ignorant. There's no way I'll let that happen. Now the question comes, you got these other 2 guys, Parsons and Prescott. I'm going to go with a couple different just what-ifs. If I could afford to re-sign all 3 of them, yeah, I'd do that. But I don't know their exact salary cap, so I'm going to explore this a little bit. Let's say I just couldn't re-sign all of them to the deals that they're going to want. I've already said I'm not going to let CeeDee Lamb walk. Now I've got to decide between the other two. People might disagree with this. For me, and I'll say why, I would re-sign Parsons. Now, the argument could be made, well, why not try to trade Parsons because of the trade value he probably has? Any team in the league would want him, and I agree with that. The reason I say I would try to sew him up, I don't know that I can replace him. Prescott's a pretty good quarterback, but I think I could plug in several other quarterbacks in that spot that would be probably comparable. I don't know that I could replace Micah Parsons. As young as he is, the speed, the strength, the athleticism. Talmadge and I talked about this off camera. He does kind of disappear in some games, so I'm not saying it's perfect. Yeah. I don't know too many of the guys around the league.
I think it has more to do with as the year wears on.
As the year wears on. Yeah. I think that's what you said. He disappears as the year wears on. So I agree with that. And you got, like, be honest, tell me if you agree or disagree. I don't know that there's hardly any other guys that I could replace him with with his overall skill set, especially as young as he is.
He's harder to replace, and I know you'll get into this. I don't want to steal your thunder because it's probably something you're going to get into. Again, that's the problem with waiting so long. Because if you're talking about signing Dak, you could have signed Dak for $15 million cheaper earlier in the year.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing. So my answer changes based on when I signed Dak. If I signed Dak when I should have signed him months ago, I'm keeping all three and don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm probably still able to keep all three, but now your depth everywhere else is going to be shot.
Yes.
And they're going to end up keeping all three, which again, why not sign Parsons now? Because if thing's going to happen to him, you're going to wait, the price tag's going to go up, you're going to sign him anyway, and then the rest of your depth is gone. We already started to see that in this offseason.
Yes.
The defensive line depth is gone, and wherever they had injuries this year, the defensive line. And now they're an average football team, which to be honest, I'm not trying to brag and say I knew because you don't know until they play the game. But if you know football, you probably saw this coming because they had no depth in the defensive line.
And you can't control injuries, but you can control a lack of depth. That's why you have to have
They
depth.
never got size at linebacker, which that's why everybody runs the ball on them because they have no size at linebacker. They didn't fix that.
Because they didn't plug that
You got cornerbacks that are good, but they're coming off injury.
Yeah.
Right? One during the season that's already happened, and one coming off an injury from the previous season. Yeah. So all of a sudden, you don't have any receivers with speed because you got an older receiver in Cooks who's got one. You got CeeDee Lamb. What else do you have? Because Tolbert has come on, but we didn't know he was going to come
I was about to say, I will be, to your point, Tolbert has been a little better this year than I expected, but if I'm flashing back to what I would have done coming in, I don't have a lot of expectations for him. I got to hope he does kind of what he's done this year, but I'm not expecting it.
I'll give you more proof. Turpin's used more in the passing game now. Like you might say that's a good thing, but why is he being used in the passing game?
Because
you ain't got nobody else.
You don't have any other option.
He's a kick returner, but you got no
But you
choice.
have to put him on the field.
Give him credit. He's taking advantage of it, but that's not what you want to go into your year doing. So,
right.
I'm sorry, I'm getting way ahead, but I'm just saying it's a domino effect. And anybody who thought this team was going to be any more than 9-8, 10-7, I'm sorry, and they might not even be that, but I'm saying
they may not end up.
To me, that was their ceiling. But everybody, just because they won 12 games 3 years in a row, it's not automatic, folks.
Nothing's automatic in
It
this
goes
league.
away like that. The only thing automatic is his team.
Yeah.
They're automatic. But other than that.
And especially when you don't.
I got lucky when I got.
When you don't plug these gaps, So anyway, I'm going to explore the scenario of what if I couldn't keep them all three and Dak might be the expendable one. Now, ideally, and this would not happen, but ideally, if I'm looking to replace Dak at quarterback, these guys know this, but I'll say it for the audience. Who's the one quarterback in the league that's now that I'd rather have more than anybody else? You want to say it on 3? 1, 2, 3. Lamar Jackson.
No, I was going to say Jayden Daniels.
He's a close second. We'll get to him.
I was going to say Justin Fields.
He also might come into the conversation.
I was going to say Anthony Richardson.
These guys know the style of quarterback that I like. Athletic, fast, can run,
I was
can
going to
pass.
say Vince Young.
Let's not forget Kyler Murray, though.
I was going to say Michael Vick.
If he, maybe is he available? He's a free agent, right?
If you get down to Ryan Leaf, you got a problem.
he doesn't fit the mold.
You shouldn't.
But no, in a perfect world, if I could have Lamar Jackson as my quarterback, indubitably, I'm not getting him. There's not a reason to explore that. That's where my brain. If I was sitting down to just brainstorm, okay, if I can't re-sign Dak, where do I want to go? Lamar's where my brain goes. There's hardly any scenario where Baltimore would be willing to part with him without me giving up just an insane amount. So that's probably not happening. At the most, if I were friends with the Ravens owner, like the way we're friends, I might mostly jokingly say, what would it even take for you to trade Lamar somewhere? I'm just curious. We both know you won't, but what would it even take? And then we laugh about it and move on. But if for some strange reason you gave me reason to think there's a sliver of hope, then maybe I explore it. That's like in a dream world. Okay, but that's the type of quarterback I'm looking for. These guys named some other guys that would cross my mind. Anthony Richardson, although where we look at right now, I'd be happy that I didn't go that route.
Right.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired. Take me off the podcast.
Take me
I'm tired.
Talman just tapping his helmet over here.
Here's your Reese's. And a cup of water.
Here's
Why
your
don't you
peanut
go-
butter cup.
Thank you.
Go to the blue tent in the living room.
Yeah, go to the blue tent. Watch a college football game for a few minutes.
Kyler
I might
Murray.
actually do that.
Kyler Murray's another one, and I don't think Arizona would part with him either.
No.
But he's one I would consider if I thought I could work it out. I get that he's undersized, but again, he is the style that I want.
Well-
if I can put the right weapons around him.
And again, I'm not saying this would happen, but
Right.
of the two,
That's more likely.
You might be surprised because I'm not sure they're completely sold on him. Now it's a different regime, so maybe they are.
Yeah.
They've been
Yeah.
there too. But I'm just saying
That's
that's
much more
far fetched,
likely.
but it's not far fetched.
It's not
Yeah,
Lamar
no.
Jackson far-fetched. I concur. So that's something I might like sort of explore and just if I could maybe work something out there. And then and Chris named him already. And if y'all don't know, I'm a huge fan of Jaden Daniels. I think I know what Washington's answer would be, but I'm just curious. I'm just going to see what you guys think. If there was a chance that I could maybe do some kind of trade where I offer them Prescott and maybe another piece to get the number 2 overall pick and maybe some like another pick swap or something, whatever, I might be willing to try that. I don't think Washington would go for it, but I'm curious. Like, what do y'all think the likelihood is that they would even say?
Only reason, well, not the only reason, but the you have no shot at that. But here, I guess what I'm saying, one thing that you're forgetting in your equation, or maybe you're not, you're just going to try it
I think I know what you're going, and I am thinking
They
about
ain't
it.
doing it in the same division.
Thank you.
They
I was
ain't-
going to
they-
say,
they-
because
They're
those
not doing
two
it anyway, but
teams-
they're doggone sure not going to do it in the
They're
same
not going to do it
division.
with Dallas. If they make that deal, it's not going to be with me. So, yeah, and I would know that, but, man, if I could do that and get Jaden Daniels, yeah, I'm real happy.
Only way that works, too, is you're assuming, you know he ended up being the number 2 pick. Now, what if he drops to 3 or 4? Then all of a sudden that changes things. You might be able to pull something like that off. But because
True.
the Commanders have the second pick, it's just
Yeah.
And plus the cost would be so much.
Yeah.
Even if it was a different division, that's a tough one. I like where
Yeah.
obviously we're thinking the right, but
Right, but
Yeah.
to be realistic, I know that probably wouldn't work. Chris, you
I
look
mean,
like
I was going to say, if you could get him, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I would kick Dak out the door. I'd be driving.
So y'all
I'd be
are on board with
driving. I'd be
taking
driving the
Jaden
car at
if we
about
could.
45
there's
miles an
30
hour and
other
kick him
teams
out.
that would agree with you.
Yeah. So, okay. And nothing against Dak Prescott. I want to be clear. Like, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. He does get a lot of heat. He's a decent quarterback. I'm just saying, if I couldn't sign them all, I'm looking for a young, athletic quarterback if I'm making that move. Just to be honest, he's not a bad quarterback. Some people want to say, well, he had one in the Super Bowl. He had one in the Super Bowl. I'm going to throw this into the equation.
No one else has.
Thank you. Of the active quarterbacks in the league
My guy
right
has.
now,
Yeah, we don't
tell
count
me,
him.
tell me.
My guy has.
I was about to say that. Tell me if
I'll
y'all
keep
can
my
think
mouth
of somebody else.
Matt
Just off the
Stafford.
top of my head,
Matt Stafford.
Matt Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs' backup,
Wentz.
Carson Wentz.
Yeah, but he didn't win it.
Well, but he was on a team.
He
He's got a
was
Super
on
Bowl
the team, but
ring.
yeah, he didn't.
Aaron
Yeah,
Rodgers
it
and
wasn't
Russell Wilson.
That's it.
That's out of 32 teams, and 2 of those guys are on one team, and one was not starting.
And I do agree with you on that because so many people say Dax, and I'm not saying Dax good, bad. That's not my conversation.
Right.
But some people, we didn't win the playoffs. Well, neither does Josh Allen. Neither does Lamar Jackson.
I was gonna say these other elite quarterbacks.
Neither does Joe Burrow. Now Joe Burrow got to one, but neither does Joe Burrow. So anybody else you name is the same as Dak, but Dak takes more heat than anybody
Okay,
else.
and that's my point. So thank you. I get that he hadn't won a Super Bowl. Were they going to win one with somebody? You don't know that. Like none of these other guys. Is Josh Allen a great quarterback? Yeah. I already said Lamar would be my ideal choice. Josh Allen's another one. Athletic, fast, can pass, can run. If I thought I could sign him, yes. That's not happening either. But I'd love to have either one of those guys. They haven't won Super Bowls either. So I'm kind of in the same boat either way on that. The one deal that I would also look into, and I've kind of I set the precedent by telling you all the type of quarterback that I'm looking for and that I really like, and because I want a guy like Lamar Jackson's not Drew Brees, okay? He's not that level passer. But when he can do so much damage with his legs, and there's a threat with all the run pass options, and he's a better passer than he gets credit for, that's why I want him. Josh Allen's a better passer, not as good a runner, but a still really good runner. I'd love to have him. Kyler Murray, I'm not going to analyze every one of these guys, but y'all see where I'm going. That's the type of quarterback. If I had a team as an owner or as a coach, I want that type of quarterback because I want somebody who can get it down the field that can also hurt you with his legs and just keep the defense wondering what's going to happen. So the one guy, after sorting through all that I think I maybe could get, and I would probably try to make a deal for, is Justin Fields. Soon as Chicago made it known to the entire football world that they aren't taking him, if I'm the Dallas owner, I'm going to go, look, that guy's too good to stand on the sideline. I get that his numbers haven't quite been amazing, but if you look at what he did at Ohio State, you look at the fact that he didn't have great weapons in Chicago. He did have DJ Moore for one season, but also Fields missed 4 games with torn ligaments in his thumb. He hasn't had the best situation, in my opinion. If I bring him here with CeeDee Lamb and one of the running backs I'm going to talk about soon and Jake Ferguson and get another number 2 receiver, I just don't know. Is he going to bring us to the Super Bowl? I don't know, but we're not going anyway with what we're doing. So I would look at Justin Fields. I don't know if Chicago would do a trade. If I could do some kind of trade involving sending Prescott. Now, they may not want that if they want Caleb Williams bad enough, so who knows. If I can't work out a trade, and I wouldn't do a straight Prescott for Fields because as much as I like Fields, he hadn't proven enough. I'm not going to get shafted like that. But if you want to throw in a draft pick or throw in a Roschon Johnson or fill another need that I have, we might be able to work something out. Worst case scenario, if I can't work that out this year, I'm going to tell you right now what I would do. Prescott is under contract through the 2025 season. I'm keeping him on my roster and just not offering him a contract yet. And then I'm going to do what Pittsburgh did and send a 6th-round draft pick to Chicago, and now Justin Fields is on my team, and here's what I would do. Yes, he's my number 2 quarterback, but this guy is 6'3", 227. He's fast, he's athletic. I know they haven't played too many other positions, but I'm going to at least attempt on some level to use him like Taysom Hill. I'm going to put him in the backfield sometimes, even if it's just to throw the defense off. I'll line him up in the slot and work with him on his route running. And then maybe next year he takes over as my quarterback. I get that sounds crazy, but so am I. I would do that to bring him over and just see how that played out.
Well, you're just all in, right? So
I am all in. I'm going to do what I can.
I'll buy that to a point. The part that I would struggle with in that scenario is the gadget thing, the Taysom Hill thing. He's never done it. And now you're asking coaches, okay, you got enough to worry about to get ready to prepare for teams on Sunday that want to take our head off.
Right.
I'm going to take time for coaches to teach this man how to run routes for certain packages.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to divide my coaching for something that's going to have very little payback. You're not going to
get I get that.
That's pennies on the dollar and a waste of time to me. Now, if the scenario felt like you talked about to where like it felt to Pittsburgh, heck yeah, what do you have to go for?
Right.
I'm not a Fields guy, but I'm saying you are.
You understand.
And you're the GM, so that makes sense. But I don't know if I would buy that. Well, if he's on my team, your job is to focus on being a quarterback next year when this guy is gone.
And that's my main
every
thing.
Snap is I'm not wasting time with gadgets. And I don't want to mess with his mind either, because when you do that, what you're saying is, I don't really see you as a quarterback, or I'm not quite sure about you as a quarterback.
So let me just do something
create
else.
another position
Yeah.
for you just because you're on my roster and I need to utilize you. I wouldn't do that. You could do that with Hill because he knew that coming into
That's
the league.
what. Yeah.
But, and so I'm not knocking your premise, but that's the only part I would.
Well,
kinda push
and I
back
don't,
on.
and I don't disagree with that, because here's the thing too. You also risk him getting a bad injury that's going to affect him next year if you use him those way. And unlike Taysom Hill, Justin Fields hasn't played tight end receiver, so that I would have the thought of, let's maybe look at doing that. If it just wasn't going to work or it's too much trouble, whatever, we abandon it. We don't I'm not structuring
You're
my
not married
season
to it.
around. Oh no, we have to do this. This is why I brought him in. No, that's more of a, we could maybe do some things like that and then use him for his athleticism. But no, we're not salvaging too much of the season to, like you said, pull some stunt that hasn't been proven. Yeah. That would be ignorant. But if I couldn't work anything else out, yeah, I would send. I mean, heck, Pittsburgh got him for almost nothing.
Right.
I could send a 6th-round pick and get him.
And you could have to.
Yes, and even if he backs up Prescott for a year, fine. Now next year, and again, Justin Fields, I kind of alluded to this, but I want to be clear. He hasn't proven enough for me to be talking about him on this level, and I understand that. However, I believe in the potential and the talent. I just do. Could I be wrong? Sure. But if you put him with the weapons that Dallas, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, and some other guys I'm going to talk about, and utilize him to his strengths, utilize him kind of like Baltimore's offense, where you do a lot of run-pass option, you do like Washington, and like you, Jaden Daniels does throw a great deep ball, but we talked in a previous episode how they ran certain plays to get him acclimated. Structure around Justin Fields, put him in the right situation. I do believe he actually could be a pretty good NFL quarterback, and I'd be ecstatic to get him for a 6th-round pick and see where that went. So that's some of what I would do. Now let's address the running back situation. As soon, and again, if I could have gotten maybe Roschon Johnson in Chicago, that's one piece, but he's not my workhorse either. So if Pollard's gone, even if I bring Roschon, I'm still looking to add another piece.
Yeah.
So as soon as it were legal to speak to free agents, I would be placing calls to Derrick Henry. That's the guy Chris had on his laptop that y'all didn't see a while ago. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Josh Jacobs. Now, truthfully, of the three, Henry'd be the one I want the most.
Yeah.
I'm contacting them all three right up front because I'm not going to risk
One
Henry
good, yeah.
maybe going somewhere else and me not working it out quite, and then those other guys walking too.
Yeah.
I'd contact them all right up front. Y'all might disagree with this, and that's okay. I'd let them all three know. I'm very interested in you. I want to see you in a Cowboys uniform next year. But Derek, I'm also talking to Saquon and Josh because this is still a business, and you don't have to sign with me, and I'm not going to let them walk either. But if you tell me right now you're interested, we sign paperwork, and that's it. You run the risk of all three of them saying, well, if you don't want me, I'm leaving. But you also, I think, you also can build some trust by saying, I'm going to
you're
be
being
transparent
honest.
with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I want you on my team. If that doesn't work, I am going to fill it with another role. And I'm going to tell you right up front, and I don't have to tell my players everything, but you're going to know you can trust me if I say I'm honest enough to let you know if this doesn't work. I'm also talking to Saquon Barkley. I'm also talking to Josh Jacobs.
Oddly enough, I don't even think you'd have to do all that. These players know who agents are talking to because they're so closely knit now, and a lot of them
That's
have
true,
a
too,
lot of them
especially
have the
with
same
social
agent,
media
and a lot
and
of them
the
have the
same
same
agents,
agent.
yeah.
So they already know before you tell them. Number one, number two. The only problem I'd have with that, and here's your challenge, because in theory it's right, but here's your challenge. You see how quickly these deals are signed. I know they say
Yes.
there's no tampering.
Yeah.
There's tampering.
No,
There's
there has
conversation.
to be.
As soon as the free agent period signed, I mean, Pollard was signed like 5 minutes after. I mean, these
I
deals-
texted you the next day. I was like, man, what? Like, yeah, that was
These
fast.
deals are already done. So if you're telling guys that they've already, you would have had to tell them that 2 weeks ago. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
saying you
true.
couldn't have.
Yeah, but you're
yeah,
probably not wrong.
they know. And Saquon, believe it or not, would not have interested me because I would have felt like, here's why though, and he signed for a little more. I'm not putting that much in the running back position ever. Even though, like we said, the market was a lot higher than we thought it was going to be.
It was, actually.
Jacobs would have interested me, and Henry would have interested me. Saquon, not so much.
Just for the money or something else about him?
Just for the money and to be honest, the injury history as well.
That would be my only concern with him, yes.
But I can't deny the talent, and he's definitely making it. The Eagles got better the last few weeks because they're giving him the ball like they should have been doing all
They
along.
should have been doing
So I'm not
anyway.
knocking his talent. I'm just
Yeah.
saying I don't. But those other two, especially to be honest with you, of those two, Jacobs might have interested me the most. Because I would have
The
thought.
advantage is the youth over Henry. That's the one
Not
thing
even
to
that
me.
for me, although that's part of it. But I would say, in theory anyway, I'm not saying it's worked out this way, but in theory anyway, I would have thought I could get him for less. Now it didn't.
It didn't, but I
It
see
didn't
what
quite
you mean.
work out
Yeah.
that way. But I'm saying when I'm planning all this, I'm
Yeah.
thinking he's going to be the best bang for my buck. Period.
Okay. And that,
Now,
that
if
makes some
I'm going
sense.
for the home run, if I'm going for the biggest swing, it's Derrick Henry all the way.
Yeah.
And I know the real GM has said, "Oh, he doesn't fit our offense." That's on your coaches. Figure it out. Figure
Derrick
it out.
Henry's good enough.
Figure it
Yes.
out.
No, I did hear that too, and I was like, that's an excuse for you didn't sign him.
Yeah, it's an excuse.
Henry did sign a 2-year, $16 million deal, so I would do that.
And really, $9 million is guaranteed. So it's really just a 1 year
So it's really
deal.
just So that would be my ideal choice. And I'll go through some other scenarios. If I could sign Derrick Henry, awesome. I still probably get another complimentary piece, and I'll throw some names out here a little bit for that.
I would have
just
not to knock you, but I would have just kept what's on the roster for the complimentary piece.
Yeah.
You've got
Maybe.
you got guys
Yeah.
that can play that role on the roster. They're not as known to do it.
Yeah.
But but when you drafted them or when you signed them, that's what you drafted
what
them
you
and signed
drafted
them to
for
do. So
anyway,
give them a chance to do it.
And that's not a terrible idea. But if I missed out on those three guys, I'm not wasting time. Like grass is not growing under my feet. I'm going to immediately contact DeAndre Swift, Zach Moss, and the moment to your point a while ago, the moment I find out Aaron Jones has been released, I'm going to try to beat
all
Minnesota
over
to the
that.
punch.
Yeah,
If I
I'm
can
all
get
over
him, right, if I can get Zach Moss, DeAndre Swift, or Aaron Jones, then I'm still pretty happy.
Even if they got Aaron Jones by himself, I'd be better off than.
Oh no! If I can get any one of those three,
yeah.
I'm going after. And if somehow that doesn't work, I'm not gonna sit in the corner and cry. I'm still looking. These next guys are a little bit stepped down, but again, it's like going through your progressions, throwing a pass. You go your first read. Now I'm going down. I'm still looking at Austin Eckler, Gus Edwards, Alexander Madison, J.K. Dobbins, Devin Singletary. Joe, if I find out the Bengals are even considering trading Joe Mixon, I'm talking to them. And if somehow none of that worked out, I'm going to go through. I'm making the point like I would be all in. I'm exploring every possible angle here. I would also possibly place calls to the Detroit Lions, Miami Dolphins, Pittsburgh Steelers, Seattle Seahawks, because all four of those teams have two running backs that are pretty darn good. Maybe none of them would part ways. Now, no offense to Mostert, but at his age, I wouldn't be talking about him.
Right.
If I can work out a deal for Handy somehow, yes. If I can get Kenneth Walker III or Zach Charbonnet, yes. Najee Harris or Jalen Warren, yes. Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery, again, some of these guys are going to be pretty much unattainable. I'm going to at least swing the bat and see if one of those teams would maybe work out something I could afford for one of those
I
guys.
think what I'm hearing here, no matter how far fetched some of these things are versus the other, is there were moves to be made out there.
Exactly.
And I'm just not going to buy. You're not going to tell my fan base we're all in, and you don't make any of these moves. And normally I'd make this argument. For all we know, he tried every single one of these things on this list, and none of them worked. But that's highly, highly unlikely,
Yes, it
especially at the
is.
running back position, because there was so many routes you could have taken.
Yes.
And you didn't take one of them. You took none of them. And that's the part that galls me. I'm not a Cowboy fan, but if I were, this is the first time in a long time, I feel for Cowboy fans. You were lied to.
You sit back and
You
watch
were
all
lied
these guys
to.
sign other places.
You could sign Aaron Jones. You could sign one of those names you mentioned to bring into camp to show your team you've got faith in them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm sitting there as a team, what does this team have? I don't know why people are surprised they're losing games.
You shouldn't be
What do they
even
have?
a little bit surprised.
Their offensive line is whack. All right. No running back at all. You got one wide receiver, really.
You got a great receiver, and then what else?
your defensive line, you lost all your depth and you're
Yeah, we already
hurt.
talked about that. The
You got no
linebackers need
size
help.
at
You got-
linebacker.
yeah.
You got hurt DBs. I mean, why does anybody think this team is going to
I
win
don't know
any
why
games?
anyone. I don't know why
I
anyone would.
guess because they wear that star and they won 12 games 3 years in a row. We figured it just snap your fingers. it's gonna
America's
happen.
team.
But this team, look, if Dak was, and I'm not a Dak hater or lover, I just realize he is what
Yeah,
he is.
that's kinda where I
But
am.
believe me, if you didn't have Dak, you're a 6-win team.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, they were. They were just lied to. They were lied to.
And
That's
yeah,
it.
no, there's no doubt about that. I'll go one layer further just to show to that point. I'm gonna explore whatever I can. I'm even if I can't get any of those guys I named. And first of all, I'm confident I could have gotten at least J.K. Dobbins and Alexander Madison. Or Austin Eckler and Devin Singletary. I could have gotten some. That's what I'm saying. I could have gotten some of those guys. I would have even looked at potentially trading like a late round draft pick to some decent backups. And some of these guys aren't great, but again, if I had to go this far out, Justice Hill, Tyler Algier, Elijah Mitchell, or Jordan Mason, those guys would have at least maybe done some.
Those last two names, I would have been all over. I've been
Yes,
all over. those
exactly.
last two names. Come on now.
And so that's what I'm saying. You didn't even explore.
Well,
Look
maybe-
what Jordan
maybe they
Mason-
did. We don't
yeah,
know.
Well, we'll
But-
give
but-
him. Yeah.
but I
Look
doubt
what
it.
Jordan Mason's doing this year now that he's got the opportunity. He was sitting on San Francisco's bench. I would have seen that and said, "What can I give you for this guy that's your third stringer?" Now he could be doing in Dallas what he's been doing in San Francisco. And after sorting all of that out, I will also throw this piece. First of all, if somehow I didn't land with those running backs, I'm probably going after. I'm definitely drafting somebody. But I'll say this: even if I got Derrick Henry, and y'all can disagree with that, and that this one I'm about saying that's okay, and I wouldn't blame you too much. Even if I got Derrick Henry or anybody else on this list, I might still use like a 4th round pick on Braylon Allen. And that's just because the guy is 6'2", 235.
No problem with that.
He started as a true. He started at Wisconsin as a 17-year-old true freshman. He graduated a year early. Started 3 years. He's only 20 years old right now. He's got the size, the power. He's done pretty decent what we've seen already with the Jets. I would have gotten him even if I got Saquon or one of these other guys, just to use him in tandem. And if Derrick Henry retires in a couple of years, now I've got a 22-year-old Braylon Allen ready to unleash.
And even if he doesn't retire, you're not signing him to another contract.
Well, exactly. So in 2
Okay,
years,
Derrick Henry, as great as he is, I don't care how great he is in 2 years. You're not signing him.
and
Well,
yeah.
if you are, it's going to be a 1 year. It's going to be
Right.
1 year deal. 1 year deal.
So if
1
I
year
could
deal.
have gotten
Until
J.K.
the wheels fall
Dobbins,
off. Yes, it is.
J.K. Dobbins or Alexander Madison or Jordan Mason, and then still draft Braylon Allen, I'll be honest, if I've got Justin Fields, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, and some combination of what I just named, I'm at least feeling pretty good going into the season. How would it play out? We'll never know. But I would feel pretty good. And then the only other piece, we talked about the number 2 receiver. If Chris beats me to the punch with Marquise Brown, I'm still probably going to look at either Curtis Samuel or KJ Osborne, 2 guys that aren't stars, but they're good enough. You
I've
pair
always
them with
liked
CeeDee
Samuel.
Lamb.
I've always liked
Why not? Or this draft class was loaded. Go after some. I mean, you may not get Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not going to get them, but there's some mid-level receivers somewhere in that draft that I could have probably gotten that would have at least been able to be on the
You
field.
can
to
get a
do-
Downs from Carolina every year in the draft.
Yeah, thank you. Josh Downs wasn't in this draft, but to your point, there was other Josh Downses in this draft
They're in every
that you
draft.
could not got to compliment. So, other than all of that, I mean, that's
You didn't talk
basically.
about the defense at all.
I didn't, and I'm going to spare some time just because I went so deep into that. You talked about the holes on defense. Yes, there's some things I would have done, but to keep this from being a 14-hour episode, I'm going to end with where I am because I've made the point. I'm doing whatever I can.
Yeah.
Even if I don't get anybody in free agency and I take Braylon Allen, I'll use a 5th or 6th round pick on like Ray Davis or Kamani Vidal or somebody. I'm going to try to put pieces together that my coach can work with to help us win football games. That's all there is to it. And yes, the defense would need some work, but again, maybe another day. I think we've fleshed this out. So, any closing statements for either one of you guys before we land the plane?
They were lied to.
They were lied to.
They were lied to.
Okay.
He's right.
So we are all in on that.
Yeah.
Thank you all
We
so
are.
much for joining us. I hope y'all had as much fun as we did. If you did like the episode, please show that by clicking the like button. If you've not already done so, do what more than 2,000 people have now done and subscribe to the channel. It really will enable me to continue to bring you this type of content as well as many other types of content. So for Chris Black, for Talmadge Roger Fernando III, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you have a great week.